We're back with a bonus conversation you'll see only here on CBS News, New York. So the next big hanging Chad question of the past week has been about Gregory Russ, who is the chairman of NYCHA. And, you know, between you and me, I never really understood why it was a good idea to pay someone an astronomical salary. He was paid more than the governor, to let him commute from Minneapolis, have an apartment in Tribeca. And I've just always wondered what kind of a message that sent to people who live in public housing who didn't have those kind of benefits. How do you feel about that, and what's going to happen to the next person who gets the job?
You know, interestingly, I don't see it that way. Greg Russ came to New York at a moment in time when NYCHA was really, really struggling. We had just, the HUD in the Southern District had just appointed a federal monitor, and we really needed somebody with a depth of knowledge and experience in public housing, and Greg Russ had that. And I really do believe that the Housing Authority is better after his tenure here. He was incredibly dedicated to NYCHA. He was the person who thought up of the Housing Preservation Trust.
So do you think that the next person who takes the job will get that kind of a deal, and what kinds of qualifications will that person have?
So I know that pursuant to the HUD agreement, the new person would be somebody chosen by both the mayor in coordination with HUD and the Southern District. And I think it would have to be somebody who shows experience in leading a large agency. You know, NYCHA as a public housing authority is larger than the next 9 public housing authorities combined. So it would really be somebody who has both housing experience and operations experience.
I hear that there's been some talk, though, that it might be somebody who would be part-time, and that there would be somebody like yourself who would be running the agency.
So Greg was originally, the chair position was the position. We didn't have a separate CEO. So when Greg came in, he was the chair, and then we bifurcated the roles into a CEO position and a chair who drives the strategic mission of the organization. The chair role that's now vacant is going to be unpaid. It'll be a position that's a stipend, somebody who has
like
deep
every
housing.
time you have a meeting, you get a stipend?
Yes, every time you do work, I think it's capped. You know, our board members, I think it's very similar to other board members. If you look at other boards across the city from other agencies, the chair position is an unpaid position, and somebody who could really, for NYCHA, drive the strategic mission. And then there would be a CEO who would handle the day-to-day.
So I'm interested in the fact that NYCHA has been looking at these public-private partnerships in order to raise money. To explain to our viewers, what it means is that you would try to sell land on NYCHA property where a developer could come in and build a building.
So our PACT program, which is a nationwide program, it's called RAD, but in New York we call it the PACT program. The property is never sold. NYCHA remains the owner of the property, but we partner with developers who can raise money, and the subsidy has changed from Section 9 to Section 8, which is almost double. It's a much richer subsidy.
And do they build another building on NYCHA property, or do they just redo the apartments?
The program as it stands now, they rehabilitate the buildings. And I have to tell you, it's really gaining incredible momentum because people can see for themselves the before and after. And when you think about the years of disinvestment, a complete overhaul of an apartment, you walk in and the tenants are smiling and they feel proud. You know, when you talk to people who lived in NYCHA when NYCHA was first invented, they're like, I have such great memories of it. And that's really where we need to get to.
So what's in it for the developer to come in and do this?
Well, a developer builds and then they collect the rents.
So basically they go out of NYCHA's control, or just the financial part of it?
So they're always within NYCHA's control, and after a property transfers through our PACT program, NYCHA remains involved. We partner with the developers. If they're having issues, we make sure that they're taken care of. So it's not that the residents are just turned over to a developer. NYCHA is still the landowner. NYCHA still discusses issues with the developers. It's just that the developers can do the work a lot quicker, and with the money that they get from the bonds.
So if a tenant has a problem, do they go to the developer, or do they go to you?
So they go to the developer, or the managing agent, but all of the protections that they have as a public housing resident, they have there as well.
So does the survival of NYCHA depend on this program? I mean, right now it's like, how many have you done? Like, is it 38,000, something like that?
And I believe that we have to be creative about what we're doing in public housing. PACT is our future. The trust is our future. Comprehensive modernization, which is NYCHA itself handling the rehabilitation. We need many different tools, and this is the best and most efficient way to get that done.
Has it been difficult to recruit developers who want to take on this job?
No, I think it's a great challenge, and New York is filled with people like myself who are really up for a challenge. And these are things going on in every neighborhood in every single borough, in every single neighborhood. And I think the fact that it's been so successful over the past couple of years, and you see the amount of investment, billions of dollars that are being placed into our properties that we, as NYCHA, in our current state, would not be able to do.
So has the tenant reaction to this been positive?
So it started off a little rocky. Nobody likes change. But now when TA leaders are looking at the PACT program and they're going to other developments that have already been developed or in the process of being rehabilitated, and they see the before and after, the pictures just speak for themselves.
So in early 2019, NYCHA signed an agreement with the federal government requiring it to drastically improve its compliance with HUD regulations and improve the quality of living conditions for residents at their developments. I wonder, at this point, is NYCHA in compliance with the HUD agreement that I remember was signed with great fanfare by then Mayor de Blasio and Lynn Patton representing HUD, et cetera?
So we are in compliance. There has been a slowdown a bit, and we've been very, very open and transparent in the areas where it's taking us a little longer. The pandemic certainly affected a lot of the timelines that were in the HUD agreement, but the pillar areas, the federal monitor, the fact that we have such a close and collaborative relationship now with our federal partners in the Southern District has really been a wonderful thing for NYCHA. We need people to hold us accountable. And we need partners to help us do better. So
will NYCHA be applying to the federal government in the next year or so to be relieved of any of those responsibilities it has under the agreement?
No, not at this time.
Okay, so the NYCHA Federal Monitor recently published a report focusing on data analytics to assess many of the areas of NYCHA's performance within the HUD agreement. How does NYCHA use that data to improve its operations and spend available capital money? Are you satisfied with how you're using the analytic data to improve your service?
NYCHA has a very robust data analytics department as well, and it's the one thing that can show us how we can do better when we're thinking about the amount of time it takes us to respond to a lead complaint, a mold complaint. So the data analytics absolutely helps. So you are the interim CEO. So the question is, how long do you think you'll be staying in this position? I will stay as long as they need me. I'm very dedicated to NYCHA. I'm very dedicated to the city of New York, and I love this job. Last question. What do you think NYCHA will look like in 3 years or 5 years? So 3 years is a short period of time, but I would say in 5 years, I think we're going to see properties that were rehabilitated under the trust underway, hopefully done. We're going to see a lot more properties rehabilitated under our PACT program, and we're going to see, hopefully, our comprehensive modernization program come to fruition. So I'm very, very hopeful about the future.
Lisa Bova-Hiatt, thank you so very much for joining me, and thank you for joining me as well. We're back with tenant activist Daniel Barber, who's somebody I have known for a very long time, and he has been out there in the trenches fighting for the needs of people who live in public housing. So my question to you is this. Since about 400,000 people actually live in public housing in New York, it seems to me that that's a pretty powerful voting bloc. Do you think that NYCHA tenants should organize in some fashion, some organization, so that your votes can force politicians to do what you need? I mean, you can have a say in mayoral elections. You can have a say in city council elections. You could really, force the hand of people in politics by saying, this is what we want, and you got to give it to us.
If we came together,
yeah,
we will be one of the most powerful forces in New York City to reckon with.
So how come you don't?
Because it's hard. It's hard when you have so many people who don't want to see us to come together.
Why don't they? They would think it would be in everybody's interest.
Because if we come together, sometimes when you get something and you build something so powerful, it's non-controllable. And if you can't control it to make it what you want it to be, you do everything in your power to prevent it from happening.
So what you're saying is that there are a lot of different voices in NYCHA and haven't made up their mind about what they want.
Yeah, I mean, if all the residents came together, if we pulled together, like I said previously, we would be the 26th largest city in this country.
So it seems like a no-brainer that you should do it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's where I see the future coming. The residents coming together to unify as one voice, to stand up, to fight for what they want.
Because, I mean, 400,000 votes is a lot of votes. When you take a look at the number of people who actually vote in mayoral elections and city council elections, you would be the #1 biggest bloc.
Yes, ma'am.
So the other question that comes to mind is, given the fact that Congressman Richie Torres, former city councilman Richie Torres, who grew up in public housing, would be a natural advocate for you and your needs in Washington, why is he unable to help you get more money?
We haven't had a conversation as of yet.
But you plan on it?
I will reach out to his office to see what we can do to talk about, to see how he's willing to assist the residents to move forward.
So, in talking to the interim chairman of NYCHA, Lisa Bova-Hiatt, we talk about the fact that there's been a financial problem because of the pandemic. Not that many people have been, only 65% of the people who live in NYCHA projects have been able to pay their rent, which has caused almost $500 million worth of arrears. What's the problem from the tenant's point of view? And is there a fear that they actually will go through with the possibility of evicting tenants? And what can you do about it?
Well, I believe that they probably will go through with evicting the tenants.
Can you stop it?
I mean, I've been reaching out to the governor's team to see if the governor will sign off on releasing the ERAP funds.
How much would that be?
We're asking for, I've asked for at least $500 million, $500 million, $500 million.
Well, that would make up the arrears, the rent arrears.
That would make up the rent arrears, and
then nobody would be evicted.
And nobody would be evicted. Everyone would be able to continue to call NYCHA home.
So are you worried that people who have lived in NYCHA for decades, maybe generations, will suddenly find themselves with no place to call home?
Yes, ma'am. That's a strong fear.
And is it just you, or are other people expressing it as well?
I mean, from a lot of the residents that I speak to and come to me for assistance, just like a resident I helped last week. He came for help because he was unable to pay his rent right before the ERAP portal closed.
Oh, my God. So what were you able to help him?
Yeah, we got a little runaround and a little push from Bronx Works and from NYCHA, but eventually NYCHA caved in and assisted the resident with getting his application in to give him a little bit of relief towards eviction.
Do you think that people who control the purse strings in the state, the city, and the federal government understand what it's like to be in your shoes?
They don't have a clue. I welcome them to come. I welcome them to come to public housing.
Do you want to tell them what it's like? I mean, tell our viewers what it's like.
For the NYCHA resident, before we were hit with a pandemic, we were already faced with a pandemic. We said enough was enough, that we stood up and we went to federal court.
You did. You got a
and
monitor.
we sued NYCHA to get a federal monitor.
And you got it.
We got a monitor, but it was a monitor with no teeth, no power.
This monitor has no teeth?
No, it's a suggestion. All he gives is a strong suggestion. He writes a report. NYCHA takes the report. HUD, Southern District, they all review it, and it's a strong suggestion.
But can't
answer.
Southern District force the city to make good on it?
I'm pretty sure
it's the federal government.
I'm pretty sure they can, but 24 CFR 964 HUD regulations is a federal document. But still, no one respects it or follows it.
But I thought in order to get the HUD money, the agreement, that big agreement that former Mayor de Blasio and the federal government through Lynn Patton and others signed was supposed to establish all kinds of guidelines that the city was supposed to meet in order to get federal funds, and the monitor was supposed to make sure that, you know, mold was taken care of, and lead paint was taken care of, and repairs were done in a timely fashion. Are you telling me that that hasn't happened?
It happens, but it happens at such a rate that it doesn't look like it is happening. It's a snail process.
Well, how long does it take to get, say you have a leak in your apartment, how long does it take to get it fixed? You put in a ticket, and then what happens?
It all depends who's putting in the ticket. If you're a regular resident putting in the ticket, you gotta wait.
So if Danny Barber puts in the ticket, it gets fixed, and
it'll get fixed by the end of the week.
If you put it in at the end of the week, if somebody else, it's like the end of the month?
It's about like the end of the month.
How is that acceptable?
If you're not, if I get residents that I've never met that call for help and got my phone number from an employee or from someone, if you want it fixed, call him. Everyone deserves to live in something suitable and fit to call home.
Right.
Everyone that runs for an elected official utilizes the sweat, the blood, and the tears of these people to run for these positions, but you have yet to deliver.
So what you're saying is they love you when there's an election season and then they ignore you afterwards?
Yeah, pretty much.
So if you could talk directly to Mayor Adams, face to face, what would you say to him, and what would you want him to promise you he would do and make good on that promise?
Well, I guess I would say, Mayor Adams, you ran a campaign on a lot of promises to the residents of public housing. You did a whole year in office. Now it's time to deliver to the residents of public housing. So you don't have to agree with my statements, my feelings, my opinions, but you were elected by the residents of the city of New York, and it's time that you step up to the residents of public housing and be the better landlord that you said that you would be.
What does a better landlord mean?
To take care of your residents and get rid of the hazardous conditions. Let's get rid of the rats once and for all.
He's hiring a rat czar.
What is really the title and the job description of a rat czar? Someone to be the fall guy if it doesn't happen the way that the city and the ridicule?
Well, so what do you want the rat czar to be?
I want the rat czar to be someone who's going to really produce. Everyone comes to work for the city, and everybody...
So are we talking about somebody who could invent the better rat trap, the better rat poison, the better... what?
No, somebody that's going to actually produce on getting rid of the rats. It's going to make rules and going to enforce it. going to make sure that
What rules do you need to get rid of rats? I mean, in other words, garbage has to be collected. Don't put food in your garbage.
Yeah, and we have to train the people. If you make rules and you're going to give regulations, you have to provide the training so that they know how to follow them.
All right, so here's the deal. So the city is now going to start a curbside composting problem where they're going to collect the food. So the food isn't going to be left out for the rats to have a feast. Is that going to be something that you think is a first step, at least, in getting rid of the rats in New York City?
If they can commit to being there to pick up the compost.
Aha.
If you don't get the compost, that's raw food. That is going to be a buffet, smorgasbord type setup for the rats.
So we're saying no more buffets.
No more buffets.
No more smorgasbord.
No more smorgasbords.
Get rid of this food.
Let's get rid of this food. Let's
but part of it, you know, there's like the onus of responsibility is on the tenants, because the tenants have to agree to follow the rules, not put food in their garbage out on the street, and only put it in these composting bins that are sealed so that the rats can't get to them. I mean, you have a responsibility as a tenant to do that.
Let's train the people. Let's put the money in the budget so that the residents can get the training on how to properly dispose of their garbage.
Seems like it's common sense. I mean, to do that.
It is common sense, but common sense ain't so common these days.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to say to the mayor about what you want?
The residents of public housing, you said you would help us, and we're just asking you, where's the help?
Okay, and on that note, I'm going to say this is the end of the show, and thank you very much for joining me, Daniel Barber, and thank you for joining me as well.